Thanks very much. Let me start by acknowledging the traditional owners of this country and the place of our meeting and recognise their continuing connection to lands, waters and communities. I pay my respects to the culture of our First Nations peoples and to elders past and present. Thanks importantly to Shannon Thomas and the organising committee for the invitation to be here. It's really great. I'm allowed out of Queensland for the first time in 3 years. I could go out, but I could never go back, so it's great to be here. Today I just want to run through what we're doing at Cross River Rail. Now this is the first underground rail tunnel in Brisbane, okay? It's a 10.2 kilometre rail line with a 5.9 kilometres of twin tunnels under the Brisbane River in the CBD. It's going to deliver 4 new underground stations at Boggo Road, Woolloongabba, Albert Street and Roma Street. The 2 upgraded stations at Dutton Park and Exhibition, complete rebuilds. There's also 6 reinvigorated Southside stations at Fairfield, Yeronga, Yeronpilly, Maruka, Rockley and Salisbury, and we're now building 3 new Gold Coast stations on the Gold Coast obviously at Pimpamar, Hope Island and Merrimack. Importantly, part of this work is the development of 5 precincts at Boggo Road, Woolloongabba, Albert Street, Roma Street and Exhibition. So a real uplift in opportunity across Brisbane and southeast Queensland. On top of that, we're introducing a new world-class signalling system, the European Train Control System. All going to plan, this will be operational by 2025. Now, one of the things we've done is we've developed this very unique common data environment. As you know, building information modelling, you've heard in the last couple of days, as part of a standard, but what we're trying to do is we're trying to improve the way that information is delivered, consumed, presented, and then integrated. So what we've done with BIM is we've built this enormous CDE. We're now using GIS as well, which is not unusual in a project like this because you need that baseline information, you need that GIS to help. We're also looking at improving this with visualisation opportunities to make sure that we can show visually what's happening underground, what's happening above ground and what's to be delivered. Integrating all of this, of course, is our system information and information model management work. So using all the data that's being delivered through the project for reporting purposes to really improve outcomes, whether it's on site, whether it's in a board meeting or whether it's reporting to the minister. Underpinning all this is what we call our project DNA, our digital network approach. And what that is a commitment to deliver an operable digital twin of the infrastructure we're building. Oh, now this is, everyone goes, oh yeah, well, that's all happening already. It is, but this is putting the digital arteries through the heart of Brisbane. Right? We're also including visualisation around the landscape and the purpose of precinct planning to get much better outcomes for the community so they can see it in real time, but also so the operators can start to test it. And by that I mean the operators from the things like Queensland Police Service, ambulance service, the rail operators and everyday commuters. But of course what we're doing with Project DNA is we're building on all this to get right up to 7D eventually, where we can integrate OPEX, which is the holy grail, I recognise that. We're at 4D, we're looking at 5D at the moment, so we've got time and cost and dollars, which is really helpful in terms of our reporting process. A lot of the drivers of our DNA approach have come from Queensland Government positions, which you'd expect, but also the integration. We've also looked at industry best practice, and then we've built on what is happening overseas, and we're learning from those projects. We're learning from Victoria, we're learning from New South Wales, we are learning from projects like Crossrail to get that advice to then not have to create the same mistakes. What we also did is made promises to ourselves that we want to be innovative at every step. And so we have a Chief Innovation Officer as well, who does a whole lot of great work. But what this means is that you can actually look at design review support all the way through the project. Here we've got Albert Street Station, which is 50 metres, the station tunnel itself, the cavern, is 50 metres below ground. right? So it's the deepest hole that has ever been dug in the heart of Brisbane. It allows constructability review, of course. It allows stakeholder engagement. What it also does is it allows the ability of 3D digital models to be mapped in real time in their locations, right? So in a moment, I'll show you the work that we did on tracking our tunnel boring machines through 2021, and then the information that we're able to get from that to get much better outcomes. It also means that we can then use that information to integrate into the Queensland Rail asset management system, their EAMS, and their long-term ability to connect sensor information, so real-time monitoring in time. This was our year of tunnelling last year. See down the bottom, you can see when we started in 2020, it wasn't until January 21 that we actually put the tunnel boring machines in the ground. They're the green lines. But then, by the end of 2021, so by December the 17th last year, all the work had been finished in the tunnelling. Now, this was one of our most visited sites to see where the tunnel boring machines were up to on our website. So it meant the community was engaged, people were engaged, they were looking at it. This visualisation really helped. What we're also able to do, though, because of the telemetry involved, was develop what we called our Eureka moment. We had real-time TBM telemetry, allowing us to remodel the tunnel paths within 10mm accuracy, because it was coming from the TBMs back into our systems. Now, this is all part of the contractual requirements, so it wasn't something we dreamt up, it was something that had to be delivered by the contractors, but it means that we know that the tunnels in our models are as built. And also, it becomes that first digital element of a true digital twin. So you can see that. So the TBMs were consuming information at a rate of knots. They were laying in the 6 segments, which created a circle. There was 4,500 circles, 27,000 separate concrete segments to create a ring for each one. Now, this was really important because each one was separately barcoded. Right? So each segment in the ring is separately barcoded. So if at any point in the future there is a problem with a coding issue or a problem with degradation, we'll be able to know exactly where those segments were that were precast off-site and how they are then, and where they're performing in the tunnel itself. So very, very rich information that we've got. It also means that we've got much more eyes on the construction integrity, not only as the tunnel was dug, but also as it was lined. And so this really improves outcomes around operation of the tunnels because, okay, the tunnels are lined and delivered, but they're not going to be operated till 2025. So the contractors that built them now have to maintain them till 2025. Right? So we're in a maintenance phase for the tunnels themselves, while we're still putting in new elements into them. You know, overhead wiring, tracks, communications, and so on and so on. So this is a game changer in terms of the way we're looking at maintenance and operation. But we're also using this information to help others in the future. Now this is fascinating because this shows just all the segments. The red one's the finish, the green one's the start. So you can see in each segment where the first element was placed. We've got all the information about each tunnel segment. We know what the bolts are. We know where the earth anchors are. We've got this rich information which we can see and we can pull back in real time. We can examine it now. We could examine it as it was going in. So this is fascinating for the project. So then what this showed was where the tunnels were running underground. Remember, this is the first time it's ever been built in Queensland, so this is a unique opportunity. That information was then saved back into our wider BIM model, and then it will add to that ultimate digital twin for Southeast Queensland. Now, many people have seen lots of models which show lots of information, which show heaps and heaps of data. This one is our Woolloongabba station. For those of you who might be familiar with Brisbane, the Gabba station will service the new Olympic Stadium for the 2032 Olympic Games. Currently, it will service the Gabba Stadium until the redevelopment occurs in 27-28. But I want you to focus on one room. And in that room, I want you to focus on a valve. Now, I can tell you right now that we've got 86 parameters of the 207 that are potentially available, filled with information about that valve. Now that means we've got that, not only in that valve, we've got it on the pipes, we've got it on the pumps, we've got it on all that other information. So it's a database on steroids, if you like, but you can click on those elements and find out exactly what the information is. We filled out 86. Queensland Rail can then contribute more information as it needs to over time to flesh out that in detail. We also use a bespoke GIS web map, and it means we can provide rich information along the course of the alignment of the tunnel to the community. This was particularly good when we started tunnel boring, when there are a number of people who are complaining that the tunnel boring machines are keeping them awake at night. We actually showed them the alignment of the tunnel boring machines and where they were, and they were 3 kilometres away, and it was like, probably it's the possums, but it certainly isn't the tunnel boring machines, because there's no way that the tunnel boring machines are coming anywhere near your place. But because of the community interest and concern, there was all those issues that the tunnel boring machines must have been doing something, and of course they weren't in that location. But this shows the impact and how we've used GIS particularly around our environmental accreditation, around our site access, walking distances, so to provide lots of rich information, not only during the construction, but also beyond that for the community. So it's been very, very valuable and very well used. Here shows some of the 3D, GIS 2D to 3D transition that we've been using, particularly around the Gabba station. So we've used photogrammetry to enhance and improve the outcomes on that station, and particularly what's happening above ground, but also what's developing below ground. Remember that below ground at the Gabba station there is 9 stories. So it's a pretty deep cavern that the station goes into, or the station box. Here we have the same information at Roma Street that we're using again to show the evolution of Roma Street and the changes that will occur for everyday commuters, for visitors, and for the sector. We've used visualisation, and the Revis2 models that we've used have been excellent because we've been able to showcase those very, very effectively, very quickly, very easily. So if you hadn't had a chance yet to go and see the Revis2 team, jump out at the next break, have a talk to them, because this is the sorts of detail of information that we have been able to generate, and I'm sure you could generate on your projects too. Here I just wanted to show how one of our project partners has used augmented reality and the value of this. So what we did, we've started with a GPS location, obviously. We've then been able to use it to show the finished work, which was a model, against what was actually delivered. So what was proposed and what was delivered. So this was incredible because it suddenly showed that the accuracy that we were getting was real. Here at the exhibition grounds, that future work is still to occur. So this is what it will look like, and this is what it currently looks like. But with that high level of information that we saw in the previous part of the video, people are much, much more confident about what they're going to get. So this means that particularly in some of our brownfield sites, and this is at Main Yard North, where we're putting a new graffiti removal shed and what we famously call our tripod, we can actually present the information to the constructors, to the contractors, and to anyone coming on site about where it is going to be built and what it's going to look like. That's all before it started coming out of the ground. Now, that graffiti removal shed on the right is about 3/4 complete now. So people are actually going up, standing in the location, looking at it with the visualisation, going, oh yeah, it's actually pretty good with all this stuff, isn't it? We can actually see what you've delivered. Here we can see below ground all the earthworks. All the piping in the earthworks. Now this is absolutely critical because this becomes like dial before you dig on steroids because we know exactly where it is. We should never, ever put a backhoe in there and pull up a line or pull up a water course or a drainage point because we should know exactly where it is. And if we do it, it's negligent because we haven't been checking the information to confirm that it's actually in the ground. And it's in model, right? So it's not, and unless there are changes made in the future which are not documented and contracted to be delivered, that information will be consistent until there are enhancements provided. Here's what Roma Street looks like currently, and this is what it's going to look like when it's finished. So again, showing that information has been critical, particularly to key decision makers, to the Premier, the Minister for Transport, and users, because they suddenly go, oh, we can actually see what it's going to look like. This is going to be pretty good, isn't it? It's like, yeah, it is. It's really good. What I also want to show here is a new pedestrian and cycle bridge. Whoops, let me just go back. It doesn't want to show it. Okay. The pedestrian and cycle bridge was just to show how we'd used in-house modelling to develop a pedestrian bridge across a pretty complicated site. This one is quite an interesting video. This combines BIM, GIS and gamification, and it really takes the whole element to the next level. I mean, I think this is where the gold is in this because this shows how community engagement can really work. I'd like you to focus on Roma Street Station. It's in the heart of the city, 3 minutes to Albert Street, 4 minutes to Exhibition. You can walk into the city quite quickly, the CBD, across the Cultural Centre and around to Suncorp Stadium. We had reputedly Brisbane's ugliest building on the site, and no one raised an eyelid when this thing got pulled down, but we were able to model it to show what was there, the Brisbane Transit Centre, and what will be. And this was a game change because people suddenly engaged and went, oh, this is actually going to be pretty special, isn't it? Look at the views that are opened up. Look at the connection. We also wanted to show what a journey would be like so that people could understand if they were catching the train, what would the trip look like. So we then took them below ground, brought them in from the north side of the city, and to show them just how easy it will be to get back up to the surface. So again, using it for community engagement, using it for consultation has been really, really helpful and powerful. So this is accurate, right? So this is all specified. This is the colour schemes, probably some of the avatars aren't quite perfect, but you know what I mean. We know that how far it is below ground. We know the way that people are going to access it. We know the signage that's going to be there. We've seen the routes that people will be able to take. We've deliberately not put any nice little newspaper shops or coffee shops on the platform. They're all above ground, so we want people to get up out of the bowels and up to the surface. So as you can see, according to our designers, by 2025, there'll be lots of nice trim people in Queensland. We've lost all the overweight people. And importantly, if you look closely, no one's looking at a phone, right? So, okay, the avatars aren't quite right, but you get the message. We're all still a bit stooped from, looking at the phones for months or years, but here it is. So this was able to be used to showcase how the centre will work, or the station will work, and then what the development opportunities are beyond this site. Because remember, we're not only doing a piece of infrastructure, we're looking at the development opportunities above. So the greyed out buildings are what are proposed, and that shows the development sector, what the investment opportunities could be. So across to the right, that big dome will become known as Brisbane Live or Brisbane Arena, which will become the aquatic centre for the 2032 Olympics. Yet to be funded, yet to be built. You can also see some of the other development parcels and the opportunities in the heart of the city. So it's going to change the way that the city will work because it will drag opportunities to what we call the western end of the city. So where does this all lead us? This leads us to a spatially enabled digital twin for Queensland, for SEQ. because what we're looking at is using the SEQ City deal that was recently announced or finalised and signed, the digital twin prototype, the GIS base that we've got underneath it, and of course, looking to leverage opportunities with all the information that's coming. Right? But you've got to have a good base on which to do that. So Cross-River Rail is playing its part. So what does the future hold for us? Well, we think that it'll be very exciting, very interesting, and it will help give us an opportunity to build digital models for operations, because that's where the gold is. That's where the costs are. And at the moment, certainly in Queensland, and I'm sure in every other jurisdiction across Australia, treasuries and finance departments focus on the capital cost, and they kick the OPEX cost out because it'll just, once you build it, you'll fund it. But over the life cycle, what we're trying to do is demonstrate the value and look at the overall costings over the life cycle of the asset. We're developing opportunities, of course, with other stakeholders, so Queensland Rail, Department of Transport and Main Roads, Department of Resources and 3D Cadastre, but also supporting the 2032 Olympics. Right, because the 2032 Olympics are going to be the best ever. Every Olympics is the best ever. But what the head of the IOC has said is we want to make sure that it's digitally enabled, right? So they're going to sell tickets virtually, so you can have a seat, I'm told, in a stadium that might be sold a dozen times over, so you can watch events. You don't actually have to be in the stadium. You'll be able to pick your seat in the stadium to watch an event. So think about the monetary opportunities there as well. But Shannon, that's me. Thank you very much for the opportunity to present. I'm looking forward to the panel discussion. Russell's going to chair that. I'm happy to take questions now or roll them into the panel discussion, whatever we'd like.
Fantastic. Thanks, Andrew. And great you can be here and be part of the panel. So I might let Charlie come down and say a few words. Are there any questions? Excuse me. One online? Yeah, okay. Let's have a quick look. Okay. Understand all the BIM model is used to verify spatial requirements of all building services systems. And you mentioned the valve information. Is that information generic Revit family info or actual as installed? If not, how will you do that? It's a bit of a technical question there.
Yeah, sure. So at the moment, it is what's specified through the contract. So it's generic information. What we have to do is ensure that there's no product substitution through the contract. Okay, we've all seen the Grenfell Tower issue and the golden thread of information that was a key requirement out of that review. Right? What we're trying to do is ensure that what's specified is actually delivered into that valve in the station. Because otherwise it's worth nothing to us. Right? If someone does product substitution along the way, forget it. Right? So it's been focused on the elements to ensure that we get what we procured, and we then can provide that information on to the asset owners and asset maintainers to get better outcomes through the asset lifecycle.
Yeah, sure. Fantastic. I've got a question over here. I'll just...
Sure.
No, I think it helps with the online, so... Bring it over.
Just following on from those 86 parameters for that valve, are those 86 parameters held in a model or models, or are they held in a database connected to the model?
So they are held in the model, right? But they're also archived in the database as well. So it's how that information continues to talk, right? To ensure that there is seamless integration. Right? Otherwise, we end up in the model with this huge database that we're trying to manage, and we need to be able to pull that information in at the time when we need to look at it. Right, so and that's what's proposed. That's what's procured, right? That obviously that valve still isn't in place because we're only on basement 9 in Wollongabba Station, and that was basement 4, I think. So yes, but that's the intention, to pull it together to make sure that the database information is provided to the asset managers, but then an asset maintainer, as they go out to site, can click on that information and go, yes, it's in room 132, it's valve 16, it's a common set of valves or a bespoke valve, I'm pretty sure it'll be common generally, and this is the information that we know about it.
Well, I think we're getting the message to move on. So thanks, Andrew. Thanks again. And just one comment, looks like such a powerful tool to be able to communicate the design and what's coming for the future just to the community and other stakeholders. So pretty impressive stuff there.
Thanks, Sean.
Excellent. Yeah, round of applause, guys. Andrew, you're really important. You can go and take a seat.